Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to my new video where we are going to go over 5 tips that I think can really help you climb with Kaisa. Now, if you're new to my channel, my name is LowFit. I do educational content. I do tips videos, guide videos, and I also stream over on Twitch. If you would like to get a hold of me, I'm going to put a link to my Twitch and Discord, and you can just send me a direct message there if you have any questions. If you're curious about my experience, right now I play in the Diamond 2 and 3 ELO, and yeah, I am limited with this type of format where I can only do 5 tips. So if you have your own, I'd love to hear your thoughts down below in the comments section. So without further ado, let's get right into the first tip. Alright, and jumping into tip number 1, I just really want to talk about burning a couple of things into your head when you are playing Kaisa, because I think these timings are exceedingly important and the distances are extremely important. So the number one thing you need to get extremely used to is your Q range, because how you're able to play your Q out if you want to be fighting from a safe distance is you do not have to stay in this Q circle ratio or range, this little circle. You can Q and then get out. So it is really important to know your limits and knowing exactly when you can be throwing it out at max range and continue kiting away from the enemy. Say that's something like a Lee Sin or a Master Yi that's looking to chase you down. You don't really want to use your Q and then like maybe walk into them. You really want to be using it for max range. So always check out the practice tool before playing the champion, play some normals with it, and just get really used to this Q range because it's going to be exceedingly important. The second one is the downtime with your E. If you didn't know, the E, you are supercharging yourself and you are not able to attack while you are getting your increased movement speed and your stealth if you have it upgraded. So just get really used to the understanding that you're not going to be able to move, and this is a time for repositioning. So that would be the second kind of timing you really need to get in your head. That has a little bit of a helpful bar down here that just lets you know when you're able to attack and when you're losing the increased movement speed. And third is the timing behind your W Void Seeker. There is a bit of a cast time that you need to get used to because you are going to have to dramatically adjust where you are shooting your W. People really I mean, Kaisa is a very popular pick, so a lot of people are going to know what it means when you're just sitting still and it looks like you're charging up your laser beams right there to move to a different side or move at a different angle. So just getting used to the W casting time is going to be important. Obviously, throwing the W from the shadows and from Fog of War is going to be extremely beneficial as well, but just getting really used to the cast time is going to pay off a lot of dividends. Then also just a really small thing with the W is anything with the cast time, you're able to start the cast and then flash it to just really find some unexpected bursts, which you can actually get some early kills with Kaisa. So if you just want like a lot of really strong bursts, you can do a W flash in if you're under very little threat. But again, those are the 3 things that I really want you guys to have practice and have extremely down. You should know in your brain internally that this is the exact range of your Q, and this is when you are about to get in range, and then the E downtime in between your autos, and then the W cast time. And once you have those 3 things mastered, I think it's going to help you out quite a bit when you are playing Kaisa. And now we'll wrap up tip number 1. Alright, and jumping into tip number 2, I want to talk about a little bit about the current meta and why I think Kaisa can be an extremely strong pick right now. Up in the top lane, there are a lot of fighters and split pushers going on, and when you are playing Kaisa, lane ganks are extremely possible when you're playing with something that can proc your passive, because what they're going to allow to do, maybe you have something like a Jax that is able to stun the enemy, and then you're able to follow it up with your ultimate and just really help out your split pusher. And a lot of the top lane matchups right now are extremely snowballing one way or the other, with a lot of like Renekton's, a lot of Kleds, a lot of just things that are going to be looking to all in each other over and over again. So if you're playing with the split pusher, always look for these roams. Obviously, during laning phase, it's not going to be the most optimal unless you're looking for a lane swap, but kind of in mid to late game is just a great time to look for the outnumber in the top lanes if you have 2 split pushers, because Kaisa is just, with the semi-global, can be really one of those champions, and I think this is really heavily underutilized by low elo players. They don't really view Kaisa as someone that can assist the side lanes at a great degree, like Twisted Fate or something like a Kled or Gangplank or Karthus. So that will wrap up tip number 2. If you have any questions about this, I know it's a little bit of a different tip, but I wanted to just kind of get this really into your guys' mind, because in LCK you see this actually quite a bit when you're playing Kaisa, is they look for the outnumbers in the top lanes on the roams with Kaisa. Alright, and jumping into tip number 3, I want to talk about Kaisa and objective control, because this is exceedingly important, and this is an extremely strong way that Kaisa can fit into your game and team comps. First of all, being able to scout with your W is just huge when people are looking to deny your team vision and you really need to see what's going on in either the Baron pit or the Dragon pit. So having a good understanding that your W is an insanely useful tool, particularly in the late game when there's just sweepers everywhere and there's control wards and you're really just looking to scout things out. Make sure that you are using your W in that capacity and you are not just kind of running in blind, and all those times where people are just sitting in this bush waiting for you guys to check Baron. Try and use this as just kind of a safe way to check out the objectives. The second thing I heavily want to talk about with Kaisa is her just insane amount of damage on Dragon, and that is really provided by your second skin, as it gives a percentage of missing health. So what you want to do to take advantage of your second skin and just your overall PvE damage is to look for lane priority, whether it's pushing the enemy laner in. If you can, maybe you have a strong support like Brand or Zyra that is able to help you push, or ping your jungler, say hey, let's get lane priority and go Dragon. I'm Kaisa, I can do a lot of damage to objectives. So always look to play around objectives when you are on Kaisa because of the power of your passive. So I think that this is just a really good reason why Kaisa is played a lot, is just her insanely strong objective control and also her ability to scout out and essentially have an extra hawk shot, something similar to Ashe, but obviously does a lot of damage and is a lot better than a hawk shot in my opinion. So that will wrap up my tip. Alright, and jumping into tip number 4, I really want to talk about the defensive abilities of Kaisa, because I think that she is a relatively safe ADC, and I want you guys to start thinking about her defensives in a different way. Obviously, I'm talking about your E movement speed, your R reposition with the shield, and then your heal and flash. So when you are playing Kaisa, how you want to look at the team fights is you want to be like, hey, what has the highest threat on me in this backline? Is there a Aatrox that's going to be flashing in and trying to CC me with the knockups and do a shit ton of damage? Am I under threat of a long range control mage, maybe something like a Morgana that's looking for a root? These are the things you need to know and that you're going to start learning as you put in more games. If you have a team fight situation where the highest threat on you is a Morgana Q, this is when you want to look to save your E. Obviously, there is a cast time behind the Q on Morgana, so when you see the cast time coming up, that is when you can press your E. If there is something like a Kled that's looking to dash in on you and use his ultimate, this is when you should be using your ultimate to reposition. So look at these as more of counter punches when you are under a lot of threat, and when you are maybe even in lane or a little bit behind in terms of resources, and really look to use them not just as, oh my god, I need to get in and I need to do a lot of damage right now. So look at these as both offensives and defensives and read the game. Is there a threat on you that really needs to be countered? That's when you need to use your R. Are you super far ahead? Are you 4-0 and the enemy team is really weak? Then you can obviously be using your stuff extremely offensive and just be using them to get in as deep as possible in the lane if they overextend. and kill them. But how I want you guys to look at Kaisa is more of a counter puncher and a counter engage her, because if they have a couple divers, say they have something like a Kazakh, say they have something like a Rengar that is always looking to jump in on you, and they are coming for you in the back line. How you want to reposition is go on their back line with your shield and put your tanks in between you and their jungler, and make sure that they first use their mobility spell. How you'd want to play this out is, say this is a team fight. If the Kazakh is looking to flank you, you want to wait for him to use his E, or you want to wait for the Rengar to use his R, and then you want to look to reposition with your R and get on these squishier targets, and putting your tank CC line in between you and your Kazakh. So this is just a little bit of a different way to look at these, because I really like Kaisa's kit. It is very flexible. These two spells can be used both offensively and defensively, so I want you guys to think out your scrimmages, think out your team fights, and what is required of you, and what is the largest threat, and using your cooldowns to counter that threat. Alright, and that will wrap up my tip. Okay, and getting into the fifth and final tip. Right now, one of the most meta builds is the AP build, where you are going a Muramana and you are going for a AP type scaling build. I just grabbed those because I couldn't buy boots with the magical footwear. So Kaisa is an extremely strong late game carry that is usually buying tier in the early game. What this means is that Kaisa needs time to scale. You want to try and provide yourself as much of a cushion in the early game. How you're able to do that is with the lifesteal rune. This is just a random rune setup, and also things like Doran's shield is going to be extremely important. You should always be mapping out what is your objective in the game right now. Is it to farm up, or am I a mid-game scaling champion? Am I something like a Pantheon that really needs to go all in, get the lead, and get the kills, and just really start snowballing the game? With Kaisa, you have to understand that you are not a Draven, you are not a Caitlyn, you are not a Lucian, you are a late game scaling champion. The trap that a lot of people fall into is, yes, press the attack is really strong. Yes, an early Q, it can do a lot of damage with the W combo, but what do you really need in this game? Is it really worth, maybe you poke out a Lucian blitz crank lane a little bit. Maybe you overextend just a little bit, get hooked to lose, and then that Lucian gets the kill and starts snowballing. You really want to assess your risks. When you are playing a late game champion like Kaisa, you really want to be like, what do I need to do in this game right now to be effective in the game and to just overall provide the most value to your team? And that is doing your job and getting a lot of CS and just being able to stick around in lane and not giving up too many kills. Obviously, this doesn't mean you shouldn't be looking for all-ins when the opportunity is presented to you, but you shouldn't be taking high risk, high reward situations when you are playing Kaisa in the early game, unless you feel like you're just better than the average person on a micro level in your elo, because that is going to tilt the chances in your favor. So when you're playing Kaisa, Doran Shield, playing defensive in lane, maybe asking for a more defensive support, and not taking just really large risks by like invading the enemy jungle or by yourself or something, right? So just always look to really just get as much CS as possible. If you struggle at all with CS, obviously the practice tool is great. You don't want to have any items on you. You do not want to have any AD in your runes. You want to make it as hard for yourself as possible to just get that, and then you want to press the lock your level button at level 1 and just CS as much as possible, and this will really up your game. I know it's not like a crazy tip that no one has heard before, but you just really need to work on your fundamentals. If you're stuck in iron, bronze, silver, gold, platinum, and you just really you can win those games just by hitting people over the head with a huge sack of gold. If you're able to CS at like 8 CS a minute, you are really going to be able to carry those late game team fights, and that's really when Kaisa turns online. But again, you probably shouldn't be taking you can take the higher risk, high reward plays in the early game, because Press the Attack is a strong rune in the early game and she has some decent early game damage. Just temper your aggression when you are first starting out Kaisa and you do not know the all-ins and the matchups as well as you might think. Alright guys, that's going to wrap up my 5 tips. If you enjoyed the video, please remember to like and subscribe. And as always, take it easy.